Welcome back to Lessons from the Front and to beautiful Katong. In today's battle report, I'll be facing off against Dom in a bolt action version 3 1000 point showdown. Dom invited me to take on his Waffen SS and I gladly accepted. Not just because Dom is a skilled and competitive player, but also because I was eager to see his figures up close. He's a seriously talented miniature painter and his work is even more impressive in person. If nothing else guys, I hope you'll enjoy getting a good look at his beautifully painted army throughout this video. Since the game would be set at the farmhouse on Mussenbergstraat, once home to the Debrief family, I decided to field my late war British to represent elements of the Worcestershire regiment who historically rested at that very farm before being ordered to push on toward Elst. As my regular viewers will know, my favourite stall in all of Singapore is Expedimix. A huge thank you goes to them for always providing such a great space for the hobby. If you enjoy this kind of historical wargaming content, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss future battle reports and on-location features. Our tabletop was inspired by wartime aerial photographs and represents the area surrounding the Debrief homestead. The battlefield is flat and relatively open, just like the real terrain. We played on a 6x4 foot table, with buildings standing in for both the Debrief farmhouse and the neighbouring farmstead. A section of railway line runs across the table representing the Nijmegen-Arnhem route, which passes not too far from the actual property. A few days after the game, I travelled to the Netherlands to visit the family and made a special stop at the real farmhouse on Mussenbergstraat. There I met Paula, who was just 6 years old during the battle and still lives on the farm with her family. She told me that the landscape hasn't changed much since the war. The farm still grows potatoes and sugar beets, though back then they also kept a few horses and cows. Dom and I rolled for the battle scenario, rolling a 2, 5 and a 4. This meant that we would be playing key positions, which you can find on page 164. Basically we ended up with 5 objectives on the board, marked here with coloured dots. The 3 with black centres were placed by Dom and the 2 with blue centres were placed by myself. Basically at the end of the game, the player holding the most objectives would claim victory. The roll of 5 meant that we would be playing from diagonally opposite quarters. With the battlefield loosely inspired by the push towards Elst, we agreed that Dom's Germans would be defending the Debrief farmhouse and the surrounding farmland, while my British forces would advance across the fields in an attempt to seize key ground. Since we rolled prepared positions, both sides could keep up to half of their forces off table in reserve. Dom chose to keep 1 Hanomag and 1 SS squad in reserve, while I chose to keep both the Bren gun carriers and the 2 veteran infantry squads that they were transporting, ready hopefully to strike when the moment was right. Right guys, so as you can see, Dom has deployed his 2 Panzer IVs covering the approaches to the Debrief family farm. One of his SS units was stationed inside the main farmhouse. Most of my forces were taking cover behind the hedge, which blocked lines of sight unless pressed up against the hedge. What was creating a lot of gaming anxiety for both of us at the start of this game was the amount of open space between our 2 forces. Turn 1 opened with both sides moving quickly to secure nearby objectives, claiming ground before the shooting truly began. With rifles out of effective range, only light machine guns opened fire across the fields. From behind the stone walls of the old Debrief farmhouse, Dom's SS squad let rip with their MG42, targeting my regular infantry squad positioned behind a hedge. I returned fire immediately with the same unit, pouring fire back in his direction. At the same time, I brought in additional pressure. My sniper and light mortar both joined the effort, zeroing in on that SS squad, with the only infantry that Dom had on his front line. And my plan was simple: pin them down hard and keep the pressure up until they broke. Dom set up a strong defensive posture, placing both his panzers on ambush, covering likely lanes of advance with overlapping fields of fire. I mirrored that discipline, giving ambush orders to my Pyre team and Stuart light tank, both concealed from view and waiting for the inevitable armoured push that I was expecting from Dom. As the turn came to a close, my forward observer called in an off-table artillery barrage, marking the spot in hopes of disrupting Dom's centre before it could fully take shape. The table was set, the fight for Mussenbergstraat had begun. Turn 2 started with a bang. Literally. Both of Dom's Panzer IVs were caught in the blast radius and each took 3 pins. The already pressured SS squad in the farmhouse took further punishment, and even Dom's officer team, headquartered in the large barn beside the Debrief house, wasn't spared pins. Sensing an opportunity, I pushed my Stuart light tank forward to the hedge line and took a shot at the Panzer IV covering the Mussenbergstraat. The Stuart's 37mm round failed to punch through the thick frontal armour of the Panzer IV, but it ricocheted off the hull, rattling the crew and adding a 4th pin to an already shaken vehicle. Knowing his armoured support was critical to holding the farm, Dom used turn 2 to rally both tanks, successfully removing pins and keeping them in the fight. Meanwhile, the infantry skirmish at the front continued. Another exchange of LMG fire cracked between my squad behind the hedgerow and Dom's dug-in SS troops in the farmhouse. Dom advanced his on-table Hanomag toward one of the unclaimed objectives, trying to stretch his line and contest ground. On my side, I moved my Piat team up to claim a second objective, continuing the British advance under covering fire. And just like turn 1, I ended turn 2 by calling in another off-table artillery barrage, thanks to the British second round of firing support special rule, found at the top of page 233. And so, turn 3 opened just as the last one had ended, with thunder. The second artillery barrage came crashing down across Dom's lines, blanketing the farm with smoke, shrapnel and chaos. The barrage struck, destroying his armoured platoon commander's Panzer IV in the process, with a spectacular blast that rocked the centre of the table. However, the other Panzer IV, the one guarding the approach to the Debrief farmhouse, emerged from the shelling with just a single pin. Still much fighting in that tank for sure. That lone pin may not have seemed like much, but it forced me to rethink my advance, knowing that tank still had firepower to blunt any careless push towards the objectives.
And I have to make a decision. I think I'm going to expose my scout car, and hoping that Dom opens up with his Panzer IV, uses up his ambush so I can sneak carriers round this turn towards the house on his side of the table.
Get moving. Get moving.
And so, with the very first order dice of turn 3, I announced to Dom that I'd be moving my scout car forward, then swinging hard left behind the tree line. I could see him weighing his options carefully, but in the end, as I'd hoped for, he chose to spring the ambush with his Panzer IV, firing at the scout car as it advanced along the Mussenbergstraat. The result was no surprise. The scout car was destroyed. But that sacrifice wasn't in vain. It was calculated to draw his fire and created the opening I needed. With the Panzer IV now committed, both of my veteran Bren gun carriers rumbled onto the table from reserve. Their infantry squads disembarked and made a sprint towards the objective near the neighbouring farmhouse, safely out of the reach of Dom's armoured hammer. Dom countered by bringing on his second Hanomag from reserve, sending it towards the same objective. The battle's focus was clearly shifting, both forces now converging on the neighbouring farm. Meanwhile, fire continued to pour across the open ground. Dom's SS squad in the Debrief farmhouse was now under heavy pressure, not just from my sniper, but from multiple units working in tandem. Pins were stacking up, and the SS squad began to take morale checks, held together only by that fanatic rule. My Stuart light tank kept up the pressure, lobbing another shell that added a second pin to the remaining Panzer IV, steadily grinding down at that threat. Turn 3 ended with both armies advancing, objectives contested, and the tension building. The real clash was just over the horizon. Turn 4 opened with boots hitting floorboards. I moved one of my veteran squads into the neighbouring farmhouse, hoping to secure a defensive position there, just as Dom's 2 SS squads, still riding in their armoured Hanomags, were closing in fast. With their 15mm of frontal armour, those half-tracks gave his troops solid protection as they rolled straight into the thick of the action. Dom split his assault. One Hanomag charged directly towards the farmhouse, while the other peeled off, laying down fire on my second veteran squad, who was still advancing along the road. The pressure was building very quickly on both sides. Over by the Deracht farmhouse, Dom's Panzer IV, already nursing multiple pins, failed a motivation check after taking yet another hit from my persistent Stuart. The result? The tank went down, giving me a window to push forward. My regular squad and platoon commander broke from cover, advancing across the open field towards the now critical flank. Meanwhile, the SS squad, holed up in the Deracht family farmhouse, was hanging on by a thread, reduced to just 2 men and buried under a pile of pins. Sensing the moment, I ordered my Paya team to make a dash towards that farmhouse, looking to press the advantage and finish the job. The battlefield was truly shifting now, with infantry converging on the neighbouring house, armour faltering, and both commanders eyeing their next decisive move.
Turn 5 saw Dom launch a ruthless and well-timed counterattack at the neighbouring farmhouse. His reserve SS squad, riding in the 251 that had entered from reserve in turn 3, leapt from their half-track and stormed the building. My veteran squad inside stood little chance. Caught off guard and outnumbered, they were swiftly overwhelmed in brutal close-quarters combat. Dom's second SS squad disembarked from the other Hanomag, making a beeline for the objective nestled in the tree line beside the farmhouse. They dug in, opened fire, raking my second veteran squad on the road with bursts of MG fire. The firefight was intense, but my troops held their ground. Supported by twin Bren gun carriers, they returned fire with deadly accuracy, cutting down Dom's SS and forcing serious casualties at the objective. As the firefight intensified, Dom pushed both 251s onto the road, attempting to cut off my advancing regular squad and platoon commander, who were now sprinting across the open ground. Undeterred, my men pressed forward and focused their fire on the 2 surviving SS still clinging to the Deracht farmhouse. That squad had racked up a staggering 10 pins, and I was certain they'd flee, until I remembered they were fanatic. They held on, somehow. Across the field, my steward once again hammered Dom's Panzer IV, pinning it once again. Though the Panzer crew did manage to pass the motivation test, their retaliatory shot went wide. A lucky escape for my light tank. By the end of the turn, Dom's infantry at the tree line objective was reduced to a lone survivor, barely holding on after a nerve-wracking morale check. My regulars were closing in fast, determined to seize the ground as the battle tipped towards its final, brutal act. The decisive action of the final turn erupted around the hedge and tree line near the neighbouring farmhouse. Dom, never one to let up, redeployed the SS squad that had earlier cleared the house in a brutal assault, sending them outside to reinforce the battered remnants of the squad contesting that objective at the tree line. I threw everything I had into that fight. My platoon commander himself joined the fray, hoping to swing the tide and seize control of the objective. While his presence brought grit and purpose, it wasn't enough to stop Dom's forces from contesting that point. Still, in the chaos, my officer managed to capture a prisoner, one who, no doubt, would have some questions to answer back at HQ. At the Deracht farmhouse, Dom's Panzer IV held its position like a steel sentinel. Though the SS squad sheltering there was effectively out of the fight, too bloodied and broken to act, my Paya team couldn't get close enough to contest the objective they guarded. And so I'd like to thank Dom for an exciting game that we had. I thoroughly enjoyed playing this fine gentleman who used his pair of 251 Hanomags like a scalpel in surgery. It was fascinating to see how he was able to deny my veterans victory at the neighbouring house by striking decisively at the critical moment. I also learnt a valuable lesson in this game, just how effective pinning can be. Dom's panzers were largely neutralized simply by layering on the pressure. More importantly, as both armies withdrew to lick their wounds in what ended in a well-earned draw, one vital lesson stuck with me. I need to start equipping my forces with proper anti-tank assets or bring heavier armor support, especially when going up against an opponent likely to field tanks. Next time, I'll be ready. So thanks so much for watching this battle report. I hope you enjoyed following the action as much as Dom and I enjoyed playing it. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment, especially if you've got some tactical tips and thoughts on the scenario. More historical battles and tabletop storytelling on the way, so stay tuned. Until next time, keep your dice rolling high, your pins low, and as always, happy gaming!